Battle of Midway was an extremely important battle because Midway is in the center of Japan and the USA, and whoever controlled Midway could launch planes from Midway to bomb the opponent. America, in this battle, would face improbable odds as Japan put a good-sized portion of their fleet into this battle, and their best commanders with outstanding naval records. Empire of Japan, 1942. After a huge military victory at Pearl Harbor, Admiral Yamamoto realizes that the Empire of Japan needs to get a strong foothold in the Pacific as to prevent the Americans from quickly ramping up their military and defeating the Empire of Japan. Admiral Yamamoto creates a three-phased plan that will rely on a surprise attack, similar to that of Pearl Harbor. Phase 1. Admiral Yamamoto sends Chuichi Nagumo up to the Aleutian Islands of Alaska to create a diversion so that the Americans would send some forces up towards the islands away from the island of Midway. Phase 2. The invasion force led by Nobutake Kondo would land around 5,000 troops on Midway and take the island of Midway from the Americans. Phase 3. Admiral Yamamoto expects American resistance from the already diminished fleet at Pearl Harbor, and so the carriers, battleships, destroyers, and airplanes would take care of said resistance, officially capture Midway, and get a strong foothold in the Pacific. Unfortunately for Japan, this did not go as they expected. A relatively new invention, code breaking, led by Joseph Rochford and his team of expert code breakers, played an important part in the Battle of Midway, and gave the outnumbered Americans a huge advantage, as they now knew where, when, and how the Japanese were going to attack. The Americans, led by Admiral Chester Nimitz, sent his best naval officers, Admiral Frank Fletcher, commander of Task Force 17, which included the USS Yorktown, and Admiral Raymond Spruance, which included the USS Hornet and the USS Enterprise. They decided to fight this battle mainly from the air so that the aircraft carriers would stay out of harm's way. June 3rd. Ensign Jack Reeb, with his P-61, discovered the Japanese invasion force. The Americans sent bombers towards the invasion force with no effect, and this marks the first engagement of the Battle of Midway.
Aircraft leave the flight decks during extensive attacks that softened up the Central Pacific targets for amphibious operations. While the carrier-based planes complete their mission, Jap bombers attempt to knock out elements of our task force. crippled plane returns to an American carrier.
Even though the Americans suffered heavy casualties on the first day, they inflicted more casualties on the next day by destroying the main force of the Japanese, which included 4 aircraft carriers, while the Americans suffered minimal casualties, losing only 1 carrier. With the Americans' astounding victory at Midway, they now had a strong foothold in the Pacific and put the Japanese on the defensive for the rest of this long and grueling war.